sometimes the Lord deals with us in strange ways, and I always say the Lord is the greatest teacher because He always gives object lessons. He uses concrete things that that the learners can understand. He paints a picture, so to speak, and uses objects that we can understand to paint the picture of what He desires to convey. And as I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but as I was thinking about the word, there's an old movie, well, it's not that old, but that flashed through my mind. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the movie Independence Day? Yeah. Yes, you know the one where the aliens come and try to destroy the world and have this plot to take over the world. And in the film, like I said, I don't even know if I should be admitting this, but this is how it came to me. So, in the movie, it's many of you know the plot. Aliens have decided they're going to take over the world. They have this plot to take over the whole galaxy, and so they come to planet Earth and they decide that they are going to take over. So they have strategic codes that they place in different places to be able to communicate with all these different alien ships. And so this cable operator, just a very brilliant man, but working in a dead-end job, he somehow intercepts these codes. And so he realizes what's happening, and so he goes to the White House and shares this information. Now, in the midst of all these things that are happening, you know, when they get this code, they intercept this code, then there's all these different alien ships that are targeted in major cities across the world, trying to annihilate them, you know, trying to get rid of the big cities first and then work their way around. And off in the wilderness, away from any of these big cities, is this one man whose name is Russell. Now this man, everyone assumes that he's a drunk. Everyone assumes that he's just a crazy old fool. No one pays attention to him. The reason no one pays attention to him is because the things that he says are, to people, unbelievable. People can't understand what he's saying. People don't comprehend. And his major theme, or his major story that he would tell people, was that while he was in the army, he was abducted by aliens. Now, I know you're all looking at me like, where are we going with this? But I promise we're going somewhere. We're going to make it quick. But his major theme when he walked about was that he was abducted by aliens. And so when this alien plot comes back, he's telling everyone, see, I told you, and now they're coming back. And so everyone at this point people just don't even know what to believe, because half of the world has been annihilated by these aliens and people are just scrambling for their lives. And in the midst of putting together this plot to foil the enemy, Will Smith is there, and his character, he's a pilot in the army, so he's a fighter pilot, very skilled. And he and this cable operator guy, they come together and they put together a plan to be able to intercept the alien ship and be able to disarm them so that they can enter a bomb and destroy them and live happily ever after. But of course they can't do it alone, because there's multiple ships, there's multiple enemies everywhere. There's the one mothership, but then they want to disarm this one mothership so that the communication will be cut between the other ships. Because you know, if you cut communication, there's no unity, then things fall apart. And so they enlist the help of this ragtag group of former pilots, including the President of the United States, and they come together. And so they arm themselves with these planes that are taken from the Air Force. They arm themselves with this plane and all these missiles. And so when Will Smith and this cable operator guy, whose name I always forget, when they go and they intercept the ship, the shield for the different spaceships are disarmed. So that means they've got an open target, because all the ships have this force field that repels any kind of missiles or any kind of bombs that try and come against them. It repels them. So when they infiltrate this ship, they disarm all the smaller ships, and then these fighter planes are able to destroy all these smaller ships and destroy all the aliens. Now, interesting story, but what's the point? The point is that in the midst of everything that's happening, the fighter pilots are gaining ground, but they haven't yet completely destroyed the enemy. In other words, they've gotten some ships down, they've won some battle, so to speak, but there's still lingering enemy. There's still an opportunity for them to be destroyed. And in a very dramatic scene, as you can imagine, Hollywood paints these things in such a dramatic fashion. But in a very dramatic fashion, all the missiles are expelled from the planes except for one. And it would so happen that the one missile that is left belongs to Russell. This crazy man who no one believes and everyone thinks is just a drunk who hit his head one too many times. But in a dramatic instant, this crazy fool, as everyone assumed him to be, this worthless man who came literally out of nowhere, recognizes the situation. And he recognizes that he is the only one who has the opportunity to save the world. And so in a very dramatic fashion, he looks at the picture of his 3 children and he rips off his face mask. And he sends a message to his children. He says, "Johnny, tell my children that I love them." And then he does what we would say is the unthinkable. He faces the enemy in the face and takes his plane and becomes a kamikaze pilot and drives his plane right into the destroyer ship, thereby destroying the enemy vessel. He sacrificed himself for the good of everybody else. He put himself aside, and this one who everyone assumed was a crazy drunk, this one who no one could understand, this one who, when you looked at him, he looked like nothing special. He became the one to save the world. And as I mentioned, the Lord is the greatest teacher because he gives us object lessons. And what I realized, even though we've heard the story so many times, what I recognize is that when I saw wrestle, I saw what the Lord has done for us. But when the Lord walked the earth, people thought he was crazy. Why? Because they couldn't understand the words that he said. Right. His words were deep. They were not natural words, because natural men, we try, and our goal is, our natural tendency is to look out for self. Right. It's to promote self, it's to take care of ourselves and our families and the things that are dearest to us. That's right. But this man who, the description we read in Isaiah, was nothing beautiful to look upon. He shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of a dry ground. Right. Nothing seemingly can grow out of a dry ground. Right. Dry ground is desolate, has nothing to draw from. When Christ walked this earth, the Bible said there is no comeliness. That when we shall see him, we wouldn't desire him. He was nothing to look upon. But yet, this one held the greatest gift that man could ever receive. Right. This one who walked the earth and spoke strange sayings that no one else could comprehend. Right. He held the one key that would save all mankind. And even though when we see him in the garden, he said, "Lord, let this cup pass from me, but nevertheless, thy will be done." And in a less dramatic fashion, but so much more important, Christ went to Calvary's Hill and became the sacrifice for all mankind. Right, go ahead. He became a sacrifice that would save a wretch like us. We were the ones who criticized him. We were the ones who spat on him as he walked up that hill and fell under the weight of the cross. We were the ones who criticized him and said, "You know, if you really are the Son of God, then come down from that tree. Save yourself if you really are the one." But the Lord didn't listen to the criticism, and he didn't listen to the cry of the crowd, but he knew that there was a greater cause. He knew that there was a greater purpose, and he put a remnant of self aside to accomplish what had to be done. Because he knew that there was a world that needed to be saved. He knew that there were people that, even though they wouldn't understand what was happening right now, there would come a time when they'd recognize what was done for them. There'd come a time that they would recognize that they're no longer under the bondage of sin, no longer under the bondage of alien forces that tried to control them and tried to take them over. There would come a day that they'll recognize that they're no longer under the control of anything else, but that they are free, that they are liberated, that they have an opportunity to truly live. For you see, where there's no life, there's no life. If you're dead and you're bound, there's no life in that. There's no hope. There's no opportunity when you're bound by something. There's no opportunity to be loosed by it. There's no opportunity to live life as you want to, or live life as you should. But when Christ came, he single-handedly loosed the bonds of sin over our lives. But wonder, why would God do such a thing? Why would the Lord leave the splendors of heaven? Philippians tell us that he thought it not robbery to become equal. He thought it not robbery to consider himself God. But yet, even so, knowing full well who he was and knowing who we are. Since it's not just enough that he knew who he was, but he knows who we are as well. And I don't know about you, but there are many of us who were despicable. There are many of us who did not believe God. We did not believe the words. We thought that people, I remember speaking to someone at work, they say, the Bible is such mumbo jumbo that it makes no sense. People think that it's foolish. But it's this foolish word, the word that seems so foolish to some, this example that seems so foolish to some, that allows us to be here. Allows us to have the liberty wherewith we stand, where we can know that there is something greater than what we see. That even when the enemy looks like it's looming in, it's going to take over, that there's still an opportunity. See, when you understand that you are free, when you understand that you have liberty, you're not threatened when things come to try and take away that liberty, because you know that you are free. Because there are some things that are worth fighting for. My mother gave me a valuable lesson when I was growing up. She said, choose your battles wisely. Because it's not everything that comes to us that we ought to fight. But when you know that you are free, you don't let the enemy just come and just trample all over you like that. You don't allow the enemy just to come and to take over, because you know that the enemy has no right. He has no power. He has no authority. And so when you understand that you are free, then you know how to fight or where to fight. You know that you can fight. You know that you won't let anything stand in your way. But the reason that the Lord came to give freedom was not because we deserved it and not because we earned it, but simply because he loves us. Russell, as I was thinking about this act that he did, the last thing that he did was he looked at this picture of his children and he said, tell my children that I love them. But he didn't just put words to what he felt. You see, love is more than a feeling, but love is a verb. And a verb is an action word. It means in order to carry out this thing, there must be some action behind it. When Russell came, he did not just say, tell my children I love them, but you know what, this is too much, so I'm just going to go home and give them a hug and then we'll all die together. But he said, listen, I have an opportunity to show love. I have an opportunity to put into practice what I say. And so what he did is he took the only thing that he had left, his life. He took everything that he had. See, love is not just echoing some words. Love is not just repeating some words that sound nice, but love is giving everything that you have. Action. For God so loved the world that he gave his only, the only one. If you are an only child, you are the only child. There's no other. You are it. So if you no longer exist, then your parents are childless. When you are the only one, there is no other. There is no alternative. And God so loved. He so loved the world. He so loved each and every one of us that he gave his only. He gave everything that he had. The other day that we were talking about David, we talked about, Sister Samantha gave a presentation about David, about how David was an adulterer and he was a shepherd and he was also a king, and how David was all these different things. But at the end of the matter was said that David was a man after God's own heart. And we asked the question, how is it that this man, and it wasn't anyone else who said this, but it was the Lord who said this. He said, I am searching after a man after my own heart.
Go ahead.
And so we said that if David was all these things, because we know that the Lord cannot dwell with sin. So if David was an adulterer and he was a murderer and he was all these things, how is it that God himself can say that he was a man after his own heart? And when we looked at David, we saw that everything that David did, he gave his all. Everything that he did, even in the sin he committed, he gave everything that he had.